And so that's basically the core competency we're going to focus on today is demonstrating ethical practice. And in that light of that subject, we hope to explore coaching failures. So I invite you to take a moment to let's take a mini guided mental snack break here. So this is the time to switch off all your other screens and devices and your phone on silent if you haven't already done so. And I invite you to sit upright away from the back of your chair, keeping the spine nice and tall, shoulders relaxed. And just give yourself a moment. If you're comfortable, close your eyes. Feel your feet connecting to the ground. The belly is relaxed, and connecting the mind and the breath and bringing your whole self into the session, letting go of everything that's waiting for you afterwards and all that you've been through today. And just being with yourself, tuning into your inner self, just being an observer. What thoughts come up and letting them just drift away. And taking 3 conscious breaths, a nice deep inhale and a nice deep exhale. Again, the nice inhale, filling in the belly, the chest, all the way up to the shoulders. And a nice deep exhale. And this time, let's gather all our energies and as we inhale and let go of all tensions, physical, mental, emotional, as we exhale. Just giving yourself 30 seconds there, just being with yourself in silence. And softly bringing yourself back, opening your eyes and giving yourself a moment to set a learning intention for yourself. You know, we know the topic, coaching failures. It evokes different reactions in us in professional and personal settings. Just take a moment to set an intention. This is what I want to walk away today with. Yeah. You may choose to write it down or just make a mental note. And then let's get into the flow of the session today. So one part of this is coaching we are all familiar with, all a bunch of coaches. The other part of it is failure. Now, what does the word failure evoke in you? It can evoke memories, it can evoke thoughts, experiences, emotions. Do type in the chat box. What does the word failure evoke in you? You see, they're not meeting expectations, learning, feedback, demoralizing. It's seen as an opportunity to learn and improve, brings up action, bounce back, frustration, opportunity for success, seen as a cliff. Clifford sees it as a stepping stone. One more chance, love that. Stigma, unheard of, something unheard of, okay. Failing to engage, failure is too final. Experiences are in a gray zone, disappointment, reboot, I love that. Loss, a chance to learn, learning. Yeah, it's just fascinating to see just one word, it evokes such different reactions in all of us. And I'm sure you have a lot of afterthoughts coming in as well. So, but here is a moment to really think about if it is bringing up something which is a little hard for me, how can I reframe it? Like, as the saying goes, that season of failure is when a season of success, the seeds of a season of success are sown. So there's a close interrelatedness between success and failure. So, and I'm sure our coaches are going to dive into that today. So, okay, I can overhear someone not too clearly. Okay, all right. So jumping into the session flow, we're going to reflect on the subject of coaching failures, refresh the competency a little bit. That's just very brief, just a slide I'll pull up to help you refresh the various elements of an ethical practice when you demonstrate ethical practice. And then we learn from our coaches today, hugely experienced. They have between them over 8,000 hours of coaching experience, a reflective dialogue that we are going to watch, and gain insights from our collective experience. And this we will do through some small group reflection. So that's also an opportunity to connect with other coaches from around and harvest common learnings and insights and make the learning deeper and richer. So that's the kind of layout of the session today. In terms of learning objectives, we want to reflect on potential failures in coaches, and in coaching, and look through it through different lenses: the lens of a coach, the lens of a coachee, the lens of a sponsor, and the lens of what happens in the coaching session before, during, and after that coaching session. So these are some lenses that we're going to look at the subject of coaching failure from. Refresh the competency on demonstrating ethical practice, and gain insights from our collective experience. So coaching failure, I think it's important to see it in the context of the definition of coaching. And ICF defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Now, this is a definition we are all familiar with. Anyone who's given the CKA knows it in their sleep and even otherwise. But I just thought it's important for us to look at it through that context. So that's why I just brought it up for you. And demonstrating ethical practice as a competency is about understanding and consistently, I think that's the key word there, applying coaching ethics and standards in our practice. And this is one last slide before we go into our session today, but just helping you refresh, what does demonstrating ethical practice, what is it all about? So it's beyond just integrity and honesty, which is, of course, core and fundamental in our interactions and contracting with our clients, sponsors, and stakeholders, but also looking at the bigger picture. And I'm not going to read this out for you. I think it's far more powerful for you to read it for yourself. So I give you a pause there to just quickly run through the list. Okay, so quite a few things there, and I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts coming up for you as you go through this. So with that context, I'd like to really thank our two speakers today for sharing their valuable time with us and welcoming them to this session. They both do not need an introduction because particularly the Pune chapter and even several of you from ICF India are very familiar with them. So Jayashree is an MCC and she's the immediate past president of Pune ICF Charter Chapter. She's an executive director with Alchemy Management Consultancy, comes with over 3,500 hours of coaching experience. Her coaching interests, as you can see, are quite wide. So across several themes of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, executive presence, authenticity, courage, and trustful relationships being built. Her work includes executive coaching, group coaching, leadership development, change management, consulting, independent assessment, and onboarding of senior leaders. She also volunteers for a number of social causes, is a researcher, has interest in classical music, Buddhist teachings, travel, blogging, writing, recently podcasting and more. She lives in Pune with her 2 sons and a husband. And we welcome you, Jayashree, for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. Thank you so much. And I introduce our next speaker today, which is Dr. Mahesh Deshmukh. He's an MCC. He is the president of the Pune ICF chapter and the CEO of Maruma. Maruma is into coaching, consulting, and leadership development. Also, they do a lot of research work. Mahesh comes with a PhD in applied psychology from IIT Mumbai, an MSc in management from the National University of Singapore, an MA in psychology from the University of Pune. He brings over 4,500 hours of coaching experience. He's a mentor coach who also offers coach training and supervision. His expertise is also in the area, amongst many others, in the area of assessment and development centers. His coaching interests span C-level coaching, the C-suite coaching, group coaching, leadership coaching, and personal transformation. He teaches courses, as you can see, that's a long list, and it includes Enneagram, functional fluency, personal growth, research methods, mindfulness, and positive psychology. Mahesh also does a lot of research and works and volunteers for a number of social causes. He lives in Pune with his wife and daughter, loves to travel, and music is his other big interest. So that's a very brief introduction of our 2 speakers today. And with that, I hand it over to them. Welcome, Mahesh and Jayashree, and to all the participants. Hope we have a great learning experience together today.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me, Jayashree?
Yes, we hear you, Mahesh.
Awesome. Thank you, Lata, for a lovely introduction of Jayashree and me. And on behalf of Pune Chapter and the team here, welcoming each one of you for this session, our first session as a council. We have taken over the first of it. And so it is a sticky topic. And a topic, as somebody put in here in the chat, is brings up shame. So much of vulnerability. I've done work using Brené's work. I'm certified in Brené's process, Brené Brown, on daring will. So it takes up so much of stuff for us, each one of us. And in this conversation, the intention is to explore what happened to us, meaning Jayashree and myself, in the process of experiencing the so-called failure. And if it's okay, I will just share a little stuff, simply because Lata has said that I also do research. I have to say something now. Yeah, so some fundamental principles we need to understand about what failure means. People have written reflection, shame, loss. There are several things that people have talked about in the chat. So I'll just clarify this concept for all of us so that it is helpful as we go.
Mahesh, sorry to interrupt. There's a little bit of lag or breaking in your voice. Is there something that can be done?
Is this better?
Yeah, it kind of comes and goes a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try this. Can you hear me loud now?
Yeah, we hear you well. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lata. So what is at the core of failure is irrational perceptions. Yeah. And we all know this as adults. Somewhere we have heard, we have read, we have known, experienced. Success and failure are terms meant to define events, not people. Yeah, we are either successful at doing something, or achieving a milestone, or we fail at doing something. So it is not person related. It is event related. And failure is a phenomena that arrives whenever we have made something we put in our efforts, in spite of our best efforts, we ought to have made some effort to achieve something and we have not met that expectation or attained that standard. And that's when we call it a failure. Uh, and why it becomes difficult, important, critical for us as coaches, not necessarily um, coaches, but as individuals, as human beings, to deal with failure is it is associated with negative self-directed emotions. And that makes it really challenging for us to get with failure head on. Yeah. And like all you said, it is associated and includes emotions like shame, guilt, blame, and so on and so forth. And the some concept that it is related to are regret,
Sorry,
rejection.
Mahesh, the voice is again having a problem. We're having a lot of comments in the chat box.
Wow. Why is this happening? I don't
I don't know
know.
if it's got to do with the bandwidth or is it the microphone?
Must be the microphone. Let
Uh,
me.
Mahesh, this is Pradeep here. Could you just check if the system microphone is being used or your Bluetooth speaker microphone is
Yeah,
being used? Because I
I'm just
think,
checking.
yeah, can you just check that out? Because you can
One
change the
sec.
mic only to your system mic that you've attached.
Yeah, I'm using this microphone which is attached to my system. I don't know if it's audible enough.
So you can just go onto the arrow next to the mute button and
I did
just,
that.
yeah, and there you can just select the microphone from there. You can just try doing that.
Yes, I did select this microphone.
Okay.
And is this audible? Otherwise,
I think you're quite clear. Can someone from the audience also give a thumbs up on chat on the audio quality now?
Okay. If that
Perfect.
works, great.
Perfect.
We'll move
Thank
on.
you.
All right. Thank you. So regret, rejection, loss, these are the other things that it is associated with. I won't get into the details of the theory and practice behind that. That we'll say for another webinar. So what is that? What is failure? What is that I see as my failure? I'll go back to my experiences in life as far as I can. You know, uh, Lata has given a rundown of so many degrees that I gathered on my way over the last 50 plus years. But little known secrets of Dr. Mahesh Deshmukh is that I flunked my 12th. Yeah. Uh, there was a time soon after my results, no, just a week before my results were out, 12th results, uh, CMC Vellore sent me a letter saying that, you know, you have cleared your entrance and your interview for medical. Please submit your mark sheet and confirm your admission. It was such a painful situation for me. My teachers, I don't know if some of them are joined today, asked me to, you know, Arey yaar, you take all those exams, sabhi clear kar do, and go join, you defer your admission for an year. I said, sir, abhi to sirf chemistry fail hua hu. I don't know how many else I will flunk if I take all the tests. So that was the situation. Big jolt for me. And you know how it feels when you fail, especially Indians, 10th and 12th. Oh my God, that is not acceptable. And the second is when I was finishing up my master's in Singapore, I applied for several jobs. I got that one damn acceptance after 52 rejections. Yeah. And while I was doing my PhD, 7 journals rejected my paper. And while there's one more thing at Singapore, National University of Singapore. I didn't know because I left my maths in somewhere in 10th standard, 1980. And I had to take up compulsory paper at NUS called econometrics. I don't know, this subject is really crazy. I don't know why people created this subject. And I had to do a lot of matrix algebra. After the first test, weekly test that prof used to conduct, was the 10. And I had to really plead with the dean of the school saying that, look, I can't get through my MSc if I have to take the subject. With great difficulty, he converted my credit to an audit subject. So these are the kind of things in my initial experiences, and I'll share some along the lines of my coaching journey also. Let me pause here and check with you, Jayashree. What do you have to share? And what comes up for you as you hear my feel?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mahesh. And first of all, of course, thank you, Lata, for prompting us to, tap into our own, shame. And I think with that comes the courage to share with so many of you gathered here. Honestly speaking, I don't have too many failure stories from academics. I don't know whether that is a good thing or bad thing. And econometrics, the subject that Mahesh, you mentioned, my mother always taught it. So, so I don't have that stories. But I was just wondering when people were typing, about what failure means to them. And I know it is quite fashionable to say, oh, we never failed, we all learned from it, and so on. I think it is also, maybe it's an afterthought when we learn from it, when what we do with the failure, etc. All that happens later. But in brutal honesty, which is the only way I know how to talk, I think when I feel I failed, there are two things that, one of the two things that has happened. One is when I feel rejected for who I am or for what I have done. And second is when I feel that I have failed to add value. Sometimes the client system in our, in the context of today's dialogue, sometimes the client may know that I have failed to add value. Sometimes the client may even not know, but I may know. So I think these are the two things, being rejected, and second is not being able to add value. I think these are the two things, when they happen or any one of them happens, I feel I have failed. So that's my take on failure.
Oh, interesting. And rejection is also an important stuff. And what really happens is we don't realize, Jayashree, I think we can explore this a little more through our experience. Rejection is primarily dependent on other people. But failure doesn't have to be linked to rejection. We can, I can set goals for myself and standards that are not dependent on the approval and acceptance of others. Most of the time, our notion of success and failure is other dependent. And that really creates a lot of problems for us. And one of the things that shows up is our rejection. One key to overcoming the dark side of failure might be to just set goals that are not so dependent on others. What is that I need to be as a coach? What is that I need to do as a coach so that I feel sufficient enough to be able to offer value, as you said, Jay. So let's explore some of these experiences. Would you want to begin, or you want me to begin? The choice is yours. Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Jayashree. Or
okay, I can share, and I can start off from the word rejection. While, as Mahesh said, it lies, the choice of rejecting you lies in the hands of the other, but the impact happens on us as people. I think that's what I believe. So I can tell you one incidence which I still consider till this date. I think it has been 6 years ago, and I still consider this as failure. That is where it was a larger assignment where about 8 people from the same team were to be coached, and I was the coach for the team. Generally, all the other coaching engagements were going all right. But one person in our second or third maybe coaching meeting, so 0th meeting and then the second coaching meeting, uh, came out very straight and said, Jayashree, I don't think our conversations are adding any value to me. So of course, I like you as a person, so we can continue to meet because the organization has mandated, that we undergo this coaching. However, I actually don't think I'm learning anything new or anything different from what I already know in these coaching meetings. So, of course, that was a shock. That was a jolt to me. But, just referring to the ICF Code of Ethics, if you see, ethics one, because I said it doesn't matter even if I have signed a contract with the organization for all 8 of you, I can always bill less. We can stop right here. If this is not adding value to you, there is no point in going forward. And we stopped that coaching engagement after that session, after that second or 0+2 sessions. So I, till this date, that incidents, that moment, that room is still fresh in my mind when I was shocked. And of course, now going back, I can always give some reasoning for that person actually did not respect his boss who had appointed me as a coach. And therefore, it was kind of a transfer of, that, what can I say, insubordinate relationship with the boss, that transfer of that relationship to me, and so on. I can always give any kinds of rationalization to what happened. But I would say that in this case, ethics one, and particularly, I think there is a particular standard 9, where there is a right to terminate the relationship and the coach respects that. So ethics one, but I feel I failed in that particular engagement.
Wow. I will begin with the, okay. Is this clear, Jayashree? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Now better.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All of us would have faced this at some point of time in our careers as coaches. That is being shortlisted. Yeah. This is one of the most common things I step into. I continue. Just last week, I had submitted a couple of profiles to one of my clients, potential clients, not clients. And there were a couple of PCCs and me and MCC, and I was sitting there waiting for my client to, or the potential client to get back to me and say what for the good news. And they called me and said they are picking up another PCC that they saw as a better match. Yeah, you know how your heart sings for a fraction of a second. Yeah, it does hurt. It does impact. And then in the past, I used to do a lot of rationalization, as you said, Jayashree, that there's insubordination. Maybe they don't know how to evaluate a good coach and a bad coach. Yeah. So there's a lot of judgments and evaluations that I used to do. But of course, you are not a good enough coach is a phrase I don't wish to use, but I just wish to communicate that the essence of what I'm saying. To be a coach who is in the service of the client, I need to grow as a coach. And my growing has really taught me and offered me insights into how I should be looking at it and not be triggered into some kind of a transference that happens to me. That I'm not good enough, I have not done well, I have failed here. So that was a big struggle in the initial years. But as you see and hear me, I still go through that because emotions is what makes us human. And if I can't access my emotions, I am not able to grow. And this is one of the learnings I had in my coaching journey. So this is the first stuff I experienced failure as a coach. And in my learning journey, I'll come to my experiences with the clients a little later, but I'll take a few minutes talking about.
Sorry to interrupt, Mahesh. There's a vote going on your audio in the chat
Give me
box.
a second.
Sorry about this. Maybe Jayashree, you could just fill in the moment.
Yeah, sure. I think Mahesh is too high tech for ICF Pune.
I guess, Mahesh, it's because of the Bluetooth headphone which is causing a little bit of interference lag.
That's
So
what I'm
sometimes
saying.
towards the end, it's probably creating, Otherwise, you are quite clear in the beginning, but as the conversation goes on, there is a lag. So maybe you can just try with the speakers or with
Sure.
a manual
Okay, sure.
earphones.
While Mahesh is, trying to, get that in order, like Lata said, I just want to add to what both Mahesh and Ivy said about, the coaching relationship either not being accepted as a coach in the shortlisting itself, or the coaching relationship being terminated. So I think it is not about the coaching relationship being terminated. I think it is what is the taste that it has left in my mouth that will decide whether I consider that as a failure. Because it has also happened that with one of my other coaches, after 3 sessions, and very smart, very what can I say, spiritually tuned in coachee, and she was paying for it herself in spite of being employed in a large organization. And after 3 sessions, she said, Jayashree, I have fetched immense value from my conversations with you. I think I can fly from this point onwards. If I need to come back for more sessions, I will. But I think right now I'm good with this. Now, this I wouldn't consider as failure. Although the engagement ended at 3 sessions, and I would have loved to, love for that engagement to go on for 3 more sessions. If the client has got it and if the client has become self-sufficient, what more would you want as a coach? So that's not, I wouldn't consider that as a failure. So it's not the ultimate outcome that decides it for me, but what taste has it left in my mouth will decide whether I consider that as a failure.
Thanks, Jayashree. Is this better? What is the vote looking like now?
It just got louder, actually, but broken.
This is worse, people are saying, but I don't know this.
So the voice is cracking, so you can just try lowering the microphone a little bit, and I think it will work.
All right. Microphone.
Little bit down and it might work.
Meanwhile, I must really appreciate you both for being so vulnerable and openly sharing, very candid shares going on there and experiences to learn from.
Okay. Let me get back to where I left off. One of the things that I must share in my learning journey as a coach is the two things I did after my coach training is to train myself as a mentor coach and as a coach supervisor. And I realized, there are expectations from the facilitators, from the examiners of these courses. And it was a 16-week long course for mentor coaching. And when I submitted my sessions for feedback, the lady came back and said, Mahesh, I don't think it meets the expectations of our standards. What do you think? Because
Mahesh, I am so sorry today. Maybe you need to log out and come back in because
I'll do that.
People are really finding it hard to hear you. Sorry about that. But this is also a good time for us to just look into what questions are coming up as you hear these experiences and looking at different aspects, who failed here. Was it the coach? Was it the coaching? So that's a good reflection to go through. And
I'd like to share, if you will. And since we are waiting for Mahesh, I'll just use the time.
Yeah, do that.
So, this was one of my first ever coaching engagements, and I got a corporate assignment. It was a year-long assignment. I was really super excited about it. And when I met the founder, and he was, very keen that this continues in, a certain trend, I went into it with the whole amount of trust. But what emerged was, he said that, the problem lies with these guys. And I said, hey, I'm sure, but, let's begin with you first. And to which he says that, no, 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 the problem's here. Let's figure this out. And these are the areas, these are the problems, this is what we want to work on. I was new to coaching and I didn't probably know how to maneuver him to agree to go with that first him getting coached and then getting the team coach. And that was the biggest fiasco. I did have the assignment. I completed it. There was a lot that came. I benefited financially. Some good came out of it as well. But I know that in my heart knows that that was something that I completely failed in, and it made me feel like really incomplete, even though I had spent almost so many months on this project. Because I felt that the jad jaise hai, you say the knee was not cared for. And so whatever work I was doing, it was always I kept noticing there was a pattern, it would get undone because the problem was really at the top. And I didn't know how to assert that in the beginning. And although I tried and he didn't, allude to it, it just didn't work. So that was one big, huge failure for me at the very beginning of my coaching career. So I just wanted to share that out there.
Spontaneously sharing that, Priya.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
And over to you, Mahesh.
Yes, so I was, is this better, Lata? First question.
Unfortunately not.
I am really unable to do anything about this. So,
Mahesh, would you have a wired earphone with headset? I think that might work better.
Maybe borrow one from someone. Yeah. So in the meanwhile, Jayashree, did you want to share another story here?
Yeah. I think somebody asked Johnny, I think, John C, I don't know, asked, what would the client consider as failure? Now, so this actually brings me to a very fundamental question as to who is the client. And if you go to actually the ethics, that whole document, ICF very clearly defines the client as the person who receives coaching. And at the same time, we all are aware of the fact that when we are working with coaching clients in large organizations, the sponsor is that entity. Sponsor entity is most often very different from the coaching client himself or herself. So when I have had some instances where the organization or the sponsor, it could be the HR, the L&D, never the business leader, but often the HR or L&D might come back to you saying, but we are not seeing any difference in this particular leader. Although we offered him coaching, we made this available to him, and you spent so many hours and so many months with this person, but we are not seeing any difference. So I think that is how typically the sponsors communicate that the coaching has not added value as per their expectations. The coaching engagement has correct. Coaching engagement has not added value as per their expectations. I think that is when it is actually, I don't consider that as a failure of coaching relationship, because in 2-3 such examples, the coachee really learned, coachee grew, and there were many other things because of which it was not perceived as a lot of growth, or maybe the expectation was too much, or maybe the organization culture did not really allow the coachee to completely flower in the coaching process. Many things were surrounding the whole coaching engagement. But fact of the matter is that you don't get repeat business from those sponsors. So if you want to consider that as a failure, then you might want to consider that as a failure. But fact is that if I don't consider that as a failure. I take it as a learning that, okay, that means more alignment with the sponsors in the initial stages is needed. And like Priya said, I think in the initial stages of my coaching also, it has been, I did not know so much, right? I always was very Puritan in my approach and very committed and only focused on the coaching client himself or herself without paying enough attention to the stakeholders. So I think management of stakeholders is something that I learned from these 2-3 instances where repeat business did not come to me.
okay. Hopefully, I'm better now.
Much better. You deserve a round of applause.
Refreshingly better.
So I'll quickly wind up my learning failures experiences and get to the coaching client experiences. So the first was mentoring. So I said, Jim, what do we need to do? She said, you need to repeat for another 16 weeks. So I had to do that. Yeah. So but then I'm realizing, as Jayashree, you put it rightly, you're sowing the seeds of success. It has been really a fulfilling journey to do mentoring after that. And there's so many nuances of mentoring which I missed out, and I exactly knew why I was invited to repeat it. Yeah. So that's about my learning part and the client facing. This is very interesting. I had a mid-level coaching client, general manager of one of the functions, heading a function in a manufacturing setup. And somebody talked about, I saw Naresh mentioning in the chat that, it is a leader thrusting upon the subordinates to go through coaching. In the initial years, I saw this. It was quote unquote remedial in nature. I don't see that happening anymore. Not really. But yes, I think when I started off, this was some 8 years ago, and the CEO approached and said, Mahesh, I'm looking to coach him. Would it be okay for you to step in and do something for this gentleman? I'll call him Ravi for the sake of convenience. So I met up with Ravi and the CEO. We got a joint agreement on what needs to be worked on. I worked with them separately and then said, okay, these seem to be the common areas where you wish to focus on. And we agreed on when we moved on. Third, fourth session, or fifth, I don't recall, the client gets up, says, Mahesh, I had enough. And I didn't know how to react. And there's a big silence. I said, Ravi, what is enough? No, I had enough of coaching for these sessions. I said, okay, so what? What next? I asked. No, I think we'll stop it here. I don't want to take any more coaching. And he didn't even wait to respond to any further questions. He said, okay, thank you very much. I'll let the CEO know. And he just walked out. And I was sitting there for 10 minutes, not knowing what hit me and wondering, and I keep detailed notes of my session. So I was flipping through my notebook. कि भाई कहाँ पे क्या गलती है, क्या बोल दिया मैंने? And I didn't find any clue. I said, okay, I must have asked too many personal questions. I looked at the list of things that I explored, not many. And then 2 days after that, I hear from the CEO saying that Mahesh Ravi has quit, put in his papers. Big shock for me. I really didn't know what to do and how to respond to this client. I said, hands off. I said, CEO, sir, my apologies. He said, Mahesh, I really don't know whether it's happened because if you're coaching, it is because of something else. That was quite settling for me. At least he didn't blame me for that. And completely out of frame for the next 4 or 5 years. After 5 years, the CEO calls me, he says, Mahesh, I'm in Chikli or some industrial area. Would you bother to spend some time with me? I said, yeah, of course. I went there. Chai, pani, nashta ho gaya, breakfast. And then he said, actually, I wanted to talk to you about Ravi. I missed a heartbeat then again. See how we respond as human beings. The moment something of that incident comes up, I got triggered. And this is, of course, 4 years I had grown. I said, oh, that's interesting. Let me listen to what you have to say. I said, this kind of affirmative sentences for myself, when I listened to this, I had become more open to listening and accepting what the CEO had to say. So this is my first lesson after 4 years. I was able to move and shift into that space. Then he said, I have an interesting observation to make, and let me share with you, he said. And I didn't want to tell you all this on the phone, so I insisted that we meet in person. I said, great. So I said, what? He said, I was invited not by him, but by his wife for a small celebration of his son. घर पे बुलाया था. I went. It was a small gathering, family function. काफी साल हो गए थे. He said this happened 2 months ago, and that's why I wanted to meet you in person. I said great. And then he said, I said, Chandru, it's a great opportunity to listen to what happened, and I'm becoming more curious now. He laughed, and then he said, let me tell you what happened in that. And all these years, I continued to treat this as a biggest failure of my coaching life. And I was waiting to hear what is that failure about? And that's what made me curious. He said his wife asked me to stay back after the function was over, and she said, I would like to speak to you about Ravi. He said, yes. And everybody left. Ladka bhi gaya, so gaya, andar jaake. Then she got him some coffee. Coffee rakh diya, and he said, this lady fell at my feet and said, she was in tears. She said, sir, I don't know what you've done to him. My husband has changed completely. Then he narrated, he said, we haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. There was somebody who coached him, and I don't know if it is the impact of that coaching. Of course, later he found out so much of impact had happened. But see, the reason I'm bringing this up is not to share about how useful or successful I was, but what I saw as a failure, like Jayashree, you said, is perceived very differently, because I'm not aware of where all I would have impacted a client or a coach. And the lesson for me was trust the process, trust yourself, make a difference in whatever little way you can for that person on that particular day. So that was my takeaway. And see how I looked at, because failure here for me was a perception. Because I didn't meet the needs, I just said Jayashree. Yeah? So that's one big example I have from my own coaching experience. Yeah, Jayashree.
Well, I was just wondering. So, one or two actually, yeah, very powerful story, Mahesh. And, I think that's a great takeaway. What I see as failure, is it really a failure? Only time will tell, perhaps. So one or two examples two examples, in fact, that come to my mind, which now I think, I learned from them, though it hurt me that time. I think I learned from them, and I've become better at managing those kinds of conversations. So one example is, and I don't know how many of you as coaches come across, these examples, but I come across this pretty often. Because whether I like it or not, in the, what can I say, higher strata of large corporates, there are only men in leadership teams. So 95% of my coaching clients are men. And very often when the coaching client feels that he has received value in the coaching engagement, he thinks that his spouse, whom he has actually probably bound to home for many years to take care of children and home and so on, should also receive some coaching. And the first time such request came to me, and the wife, of course, at least showed enthusiasm in the beginning. And there were two or three, I think, coaching meetings that happened. But it didn't go much further. And I think I was not very proficient in in managing the intricacy of relationship. So what happens when a wife comes into a coaching meeting when she thinks that it has been thrust upon her by her husband and thrust upon her a woman coach whom her husband admires? I think there are many layers of complexity, in that. And I don't think I was sensitive to that. I mean, I didn't even, because in my head, I'm quite gender neutral. So it did really strike me that all those things could be at play, and that coaching relationship did not go much further, did not yield much value, neither for the client nor for me as a coach. But I learned, and now when such requests come to me, I am quite what can I say, quite cautious if at all I accept such assignments. And I also talk about this learning in the beginning itself and see whether there's an alignment amongst all three of us. So that's something that's an, I would say, interesting learning for me.
Oh, lovely. I have a similar experience of some years ago. I think pre-pandemic. I had a similar experience was कहाँ पे थे ये दिल्ली के कोई HR head थे उन I was coaching him and he found it useful, like what you said, Jayashree, and he was struggling with his spouse's growth, and he introduced me to her. She was happy to, because she was seeing that change and shift for her husband. She said, okay, I'll jump in. And little did I realize that she was in the middle of several things, and she wouldn't be in a position to take time out for herself. So after 3 sessions, I found it less impactful and not moving forward. So in this case, I terminated the coaching intervention. I said, Sheetal, this is not really going ahead. I'm not seeing you spend time on yourself. I explained to her why we should not go forward, why we need to pause this year, and I said, let's come back to this when you're more available for yourself. So I had to say this. In the normal course, 8-10 years ago, I would have found it very difficult. I would have continued, I would have failed, and I would have been rejected and thrown out. But today, I'm able to sit and say, look, it's not working. It may not take us any further. Let's stop. And that is the stepping into courage that I have progressed into over the years. So, and it was helpful. My relations with the client have not changed. I got more work from the same organization post-pandemic. So I don't see that as a failure, but expectations were not met for myself as a coach. So there I stopped. That's an interesting experience I had for myself. Lata, how much time do we have? I'm seeing the clock.
Yeah, I think we can do about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. If you have anything else to share, Jayashree,
I also have some questions, but happy for you to just wrap up and then we can do that. Questions. Yeah.
Jayashree, I will just need 2 minutes to wrap up some of my learnings. I have no stories to share anymore. If you have, open to you.
I have a couple of stories. So from just picking up from where you left in that story, I think the courage to say no when we are seeing that this is not the right thing to do right now for this client. I think that courage needs to be gathered, and somehow it comes up maybe after years of practice, or maybe after we get secure in our profession, in our position, in our role as a coach. But this has happened to me also, I think some years ago, when a doctor, a very, what can I say, experienced expert doctor, after experiencing coaching for himself and his wife as well. In this case, his wife was also very receptive to the coaching. But after doing that, then he recommended actually his nephew to me. And my coaching client's words were, do your magic. So, and I had one or two meetings with this, the nephew of his. But I went back to the person who referred his nephew to me, saying that, coaching is not what is going to work for him. He needs therapy. So, there were different issues and different challenges which could not be tackled through a Myers-Briggs, for example, and a Myers-Briggs based coaching. So I summoned up enough courage in the interest of the client to say that, he needs a different professional and coaching is not the thing for him at that point in time. So, and just one more thing that I want to say, because that is something that is, I consider that as my growth point, and I took a lot of time to grow in that area. So one, the ICF Code of Ethics talks about the power and the status difference between the coach and the coaching client. And at least the code almost mentions as if the coach is, often considered to be sitting on the higher pedestal, and the client may think that the coach is an expert, coach is better, coach is, older or whatever. But in my case, when I started coaching, I was not very young, but I must say I was very inexperienced, with the large corporates and their businesses. So I think some of the CEOs whom I coached, I think their flamboyant personality, their, what can I say, their experience, the awe that they inspired, I think all that played on my mind when I became their coach. So it was the other way around, the status or the power difference. And all that was in my head. They always, of course, respected me as their coach. But I had to overcome that power or status difference in my head to get rid of that halo effect for me to be of value to them. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Jayashree. Like a good researcher, I wish to share some insight. One of the things personally for me was fear of failure that kicked up in the initial years. It continues, and for all of us. An interesting piece of research is said that fear of failure is associated with high levels of worry, anxiety, somatic anxiety, cognitive disruption, and things like that, and low levels of optimism also. But the flip side of this research, and which I wish to bring to your attention, is that fear of failure was unrelated to either perceived competence or fear of success. So that's a good news for us. And 3 lessons is what I wish to close this conversation with. Based on what I heard from Jayashree, based on my experiences, life experiences. The first one, there are many ways to fail, many roles, many tasks, as there are also many ways to succeed. Yeah. So the advice, I cannot possibly succeed at everything, but I can succeed at something. So my learning is, I cannot coach all. It is beyond my control. My style of coaching may not be suitable for everybody. So that has given me more acceptance of how I coach and what I do as a coach. 2, be critical of the goals and standards that define my perceptions of failure. So the advice, take the time to step back and ask whatever these goals and standards really, whether these really suit me and make me happy. Is this what I wish to do? Oftentimes, standards of success and failure are thrust upon us by external forces. That's where the rejection comes in. It may be hard to completely shake them off, but you can at least recognize them for what they are and approach them with a healthy sense of the absurd. Does it make sense for me, these yardsticks, benchmarks? 3rd, focus on what is within my control. Try not to link my perceptions of success and failure to things that are beyond my control. What is the advice? Spend time reflecting on the meaning and purpose of what my life is all about. Others cannot do this for me. Yeah. And this brings to me a little note I wish to read for all of us. Let me pull that out quickly. Is a part of the speech of President Roosevelt that he delivered. It's called as a Man in the Arena. uh, 23rd April 1910. I'll give you a little quote for all of us. This is a big lesson that I draw this as a source of my inspiration. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs, underline this, capitals bold. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings. Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that's what Roosevelt has to say. So that's my lesson, inspiration for dealing with failure.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Mahesh,
Lata. Thank you, Jayashree.
for
Thank you, everybody.
yeah, bringing us the coaches into the arena and remembering that it's about staying there and fighting our battles, sometimes hard, sometimes with a lot of shame and guilt, which years later you realize, like from some of these stories, those were actually successes which we looked from a different lens. And so I would say those scars that some of these momentary moments leave in us grow to become stripes over the years. So that's one main takeaway from us. And I think that's how we build resilience as coaches. And I see a number of comments there in the comment box now. In the interest of time, I'm going to pick up a few of the questions. Some of the others probably we'll have answers mailed back to you. So Pradeep, I request you to keep track of it in the chat box. So the first question, and maybe I'll hand this to Mahesh, it comes from Madhav, is what is the matrix that defines success in coaching? And I think it covers the topic from many, many angles. Yeah, so it's kind of a nice summary we can do on what is success. So we looked at failure.
Sorry. Everybody speaks about success. So, Lata, that should be another webinar topic.
But I'm going to press you to come up with a 2x2, which coaches love, which maybe we can circulate as part of the
2x2. The first criteria is ask your heart. Yeah. If it is fulfilling for your heart, it doesn't matter who is defining success. And that's all you need to know. That's my single point matrix, Lata.
That's a nice internal compass. Thank you for that, Mahesh. So with that, I'm going to take the next question to Jayashree. When do clients feel coaching has not helped them? This question's from Ade.
Correct. Yeah, that was the one of the earlier questions, right? Yeah, I think some time earlier I answered when sponsors feel that if they don't see the needle move, they feel coaching has failed. Clients feel coaching has not worked for them if it has been just a pleasant series of coffee conversations, but they have not learned much. Because these are all busy executives. So taking time out, even the 60 minutes out from their calendar is a big effort. So if they don't see value, I think most clients won't even wait till the last session to say, I don't want it.
Thank you so much for that, Jayashree. And I think what we also learned from your reflection was keep HR happy. And a good way to do that is have review meetings every 90 days so that they're hearing the good stories as well as giving you feedback on what's not working from the ground. So I think that's an important stakeholder if that's how your contract is in a corporate setting. That's me just wearing my HR hat. And then my next question is to Mahesh. So what not to do when you fail? You're on mute.
Is not to get into a spiral of emotions. And if I can manage my emotions, and how I'm feeling, and become more sensitive to how I'm showing up, and address my emotions. That's great. And not be carried away and get into justification. The moment uh, you know, your amygdala kicks up and your prefrontal is closed down, the world will fall apart. There is nothing you can do about it. So the best thing is to meditate, 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 be mindful of what is happening to you, and just open up this part of your body.
That's true. Yeah, I think the 6 inches from the medulla where the reptilian brain kicks in to the prefrontal cortex. And that's where the solutions come. But breathe is a good bridge too. Okay. So on that note, a question for Jayashree from Adit. It says, when you told the client that the person requires therapy and not coaching, how did you explain and how did you arrive at that conclusion? Did the client ask for any specifics?
Yeah, actually, in this particular case, the client had been on medication for some time before coming to me. So that was one, and that is when I also learned to ask that question in the chemistry meeting also. So, it is important to ask that question. So that is one thing. Second is I realized that too much of the past and the apron strings, so to say, was playing out too often in all the conversations. And and even from the body language, and those were the days of in-person coaching, not just virtual coaching. So even from the body language, the stammer, the what can I say? Sometimes even incoherent thought process. I think those were the giveaways. And I told him that he needs to. I told him that he needs to see the therapist. He was a 30 plus adult. So, but I told him, and I also told the person who had referred.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Mahesh. Yeah.
I also had similar experiences and will add. One of the things I started doing because of my own growth as a coach is I authentically say that this is beyond my capacity to deal with the client. So I am not the right person. And only then I'll wait for them to respond and say, then ask, what is that we can do? Only then do I say, please look for a therapist.
Brilliant point. Yeah. So you kind of don't shift that inadequacy to them. That's a great point. And I'm going to field just one last question, which is to both of you. There are some more, but we are just short of time. So this question is from Atul Bapat, and to both of you. Do you consider frequent rescheduling and inconsistent gaps due to coaches' inability to give time and focus as a coaching failure? Mahesh kind of answered this in one of his stories, but just wanted to bring that up.
So I can go first. So it happens. So frequent rescheduling and these inconsistencies, I think those happen. I wouldn't right away call that as failure. I would certainly go with genuine curiosity and explore with the client as to what is really happening, and is this the right time to go through this kind of engagement. So I wouldn't consider that as failure, but I would consider that as a point for exploration.
Thank you, Jayashree. And Mahesh, would you like to add something here?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Question was about frequent rescheduling and inconsistent gaps due to the coach's inability to give time and focus. Is that a coaching failure?
I think I responded by saying no to that. But I will add here that the moment I say due to coach's inability, once I underline that, I'm already making an assumption. Yeah. So I'll hold from making an assumption. I would check in why this is happening and bring it into the conversation. That also becomes a part of my coaching conversation. Only then will I be able to do something about it or not do something about it.
Yeah, I think the reference here was the coachee being short of time and frequent rescheduling happening because of that.
Even that I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just making an
Yeah.
assumption that
Could
is-
be a prioritization factor too. So there could be
I
so
don't-
much to it. Let's not assume. Yeah, right. Okay. So thank you very much to both of you. Yeah, for this engaging and very open, kind of inspiring as well as experiential session that you both did. Fabulous share there. And we are now going to open up a poll to just understand how, from an audience perspective, what are those points where failure can occur in coaching? So Pradeep, if you can just pull up the poll for us. I encourage all of you to press one or more buttons as it speaks to you.
Give me a moment, please.
All right. And after this, we have a breakout room discussion where in a small group, we get together and reflect a bit more and come back with some learnings, which will make it much more deepening of what we heard, as well as building our collective intelligence around the subject of coaching failures. Yeah. So I think so far we heard the stories from the experts who've done the years, and there's a lot more expertise in the room sitting. So we'd like to see that too getting shared and create value out of that. Okay. And yeah, thanks for that prompt, Shilpa. So we will have a little form at the end when we come back to the plenary from the breakout to have you fill a small form so that we get your CCU certificates mailed across to you accurately. So do wait for claiming credits.
I'm sorry, Lata. I guess it's a technical error that Zoom is throwing up,
Okay.
saying that the polling session cannot be activated. I don't know. It says logged in from another device, but no one seems to be logged in.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll let that pass
yes,
then. Yeah.
yes. Let's
All right.
start on with the next.
Yeah, we'll just go into the breakout room. So I'll just pull that up in a moment. So here's, sorry. So here's what we're going to do in the breakout room. Yeah, you will be in small groups with a bunch of other coaches and a lot of wisdom. And we discuss, what do you spot as potential failures in coaching? Okay, so we saw some of them through different lenses today. What are some things that you spot as potential failures in coaching, and have a nice exchange around that? One person comes back to the plenary and shares highlights of what you discovered together as a group. And one volunteer in the same group summarizes the discussion and puts it in the chat box. So that way we have a written summary as well as a quick couple of minutes summary from each of the groups. And that'll make our conversation larger and build deeper on the subject. So with that, I urge you, Pradeep, to just put us into breakout rooms. This was the poll we had while we get into breakout rooms, just looking at different points where failure can occur in coaching, pulled from the ISAFE Code of Ethics.
One moment.
Yeah.
I'm just launching it.
Yeah. So you could pick any or other themes as you have a discussion in the
I've
small
already
groups.
launched the rooms. Please
Yep.
join in.
Yeah.
You can stop the screen share.
failure in failure in coaching has different viewpoints. We spoke about the business of coaching and the coaching engagement failures, right? Coaching failures can be in the sessions also, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like waiting to hear something on that as well. But then yeah, nonetheless, I think all this broader aspect was also important to explore today.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Rajiv. And welcome back, everybody. So two things to do, in any random order, the groups can start. Whoever is your nominated speaker to share in 1 minute a very precise, sharp summary of your discussion, while the other person just drops it in the chat box. So who'd
Lata,
like to go
can I
first?
go?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Lata, I'm Atul Bapat. So
Hi, Atul.
yeah, the summary is there must be some qualities which coach must possess. And as we discuss, it is courage, courtesy, and what the third one you said? Sorry, I missed out. And then there must be also commitment, equal commitment and willingness from the coachee side, because that is also going to impact the coaching relationship. And there must be chemistry between coach and coachee.
Thank you, Atul. That's quite a bunch of C's there. And I'd like to add one, which is clarity.
Commitment. The third C was commitment. Sorry, I did not.
No, thanks for that, Atul.
Yeah, okay, bye.
Thank you so much. Others?
Okay, I'll go next. This is group
please.
4.
Yeah.
So what we discussed is, the possible failure modes in a coaching would be, one is if you as a coach have a lack of self-belief. So if you enter the coaching session with a lack of self-belief, that could be an obvious potential failure mode. Of course, we also talked about working on it, but for the want of time, I may not talk about it. Second would be when it is the coaching is entrusted on the coachee. It's not a self-driven initiative that the coachee wants. Third would be making assumptions too early in the process as a coach. I mean, we are not here to make assumptions, but go with the coach, be with the coach and then enjoy the journey. I think the moment we start making assumptions, then, there's a potential failure. Then we also talked about, although we have a framework given by ICF, but just sticking to the framework and not moving out of it could also be a failure. You have to be dynamic enough and creative enough to be within the framework, but still be with the client. I think if you're not able to do that, there could be a failure.
Thank you, Yogesh. Quite a rich harvest there. Who'd like to go next?
Me, Sandeep.
Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah, so we were from breakout room 1 and we discussed everything bit at length. Our point of view was like lack of self-belief. Again, what was discussed earlier, lack of self-belief in us, that is what is a failure. If we are not able to live up with the agreement and the contracting, in the sense if disputes goes there, it's a failure, because we believe that finally the agreement goes from us to the client. We agree on the terms, but still if that doesn't happen, there is a chance that it's a failure on our part. The third point we discussed was if we are not able to add value to the client, in the sense if client is at one state right now, if we are not able to take the client to the next step, that's a failure. And the fourth point we discussed was about if there is some task which has been assigned to the client and client has agreed that he will be able to do it in certain time, but if he's delaying it or he is not able to allocate time, and that is what is happening repetitively, it's a failure on our part, because we are not been able to pull the client back to us for the next coaching sessions. So that's a failure on our part, that we are not been able, we are not a magnet there to get him back into the session. So
Interesting.
these are the 4 points we discussed.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah, there can be more to it in terms of getting the client back. Yeah, but nice. Anybody else would like to share? And I thank you for all the lovely summaries in the chat box. That's very enriching. Anyone else? One more person would like to go before we...
Lata.
Yes,
Lata,
yes, Sheila. Yes.
From breakout number 5, I'll just brief it in 3 points. That learnings were like lack of self-belief, like everybody else shared. When if you don't believe in what you're doing, the failure is more likely to happen. And if you caress too much of victim space, the coach just goes on talking and you don't know how to stop. If you just keep on caressing, not bringing them to taking responsibility, again, there can be a failure in coaching. And taking it as our responsibility to fix the client, that's a big failure there. So not my monkey, not my back is something what we must follow. Then I think we can have more success in coaching. Yeah, that's about it from here.
Yeah, it's an important one. Don't fix. Nothing's broken, and that's not how we look at it. Thank you for that. One last, anyone? Going. There you go. Yeah.
I'll be present room 6. And first of all, thank you everyone in the room 6 for that healthy discussion. So what we were discussing, Lata, there, that contracting is an iterated process, as Johnny said in the group. And it is very important when we are doing coaching sessions, which needs to be established not only during the initiation of the coaching process, but also in the whole through sessions when the coaching is happening. That is one which can cause the success or the failure of the coaching process completely. Secondly, we also discussed that acceptance is one thing. Johnny, again, he very nicely said that coach being a mirror of a coachee, how he can be wrong. And that was really an eye-opener to us. Yes, this is something what he has told us. But again, we had in perspective that if the person is not ready or accepted to look into that mirror and accept, okay, this is wrong, and I have to really work upon it, that could also be a failure for the coach. So, please, group 6, add something. If I have missed something, please.
Thanks, Deepti. I think you bring an important point, reflection and mirror. Yeah, that's a very powerful one.
That was Johnny's point.
Johnny, yeah. Yeah, it's a group learning. So great. I think we also have quite a few summaries in the chat box. And in the interest of time, we're going to move on. And we're going to drop a form which is there in the chat box. Do fill it up for your CCU certificates. And also take the time to a couple of minutes to switch on your screens so that we can see more of your faces and click a nice group photograph.
You would have to share the passport. They won't be able to fill the form otherwise.
The password is Eureka. Can you just drop it in the chat box? So the password you need to share is Eureka. Yeah. Maybe you can just type it in the box, Shilpa.
Yeah.
So that's all caps.
Lata.
Pradeep is done.
Yeah.
Asan spelling wala do, yeah.
I know. I was started thinking. Constant alphabet se shuru hota hai.
Hey, request everybody to come on video.
Yeah, it would be nice to come on screen. Yeah.
Thank you. And a heartful Saturday smile.
Oh.
Okay,
take off my
so
glasses.
1, 2, 3 for screen number 1. Say cheese. One moment. Next screen. Thank you, everybody. One more. Okay.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Can you repeat the password, please?
It's in the chat box. It's Eureka.
Okay.
Yeah. And do fill in the form. That'll help us make sure we get the certificates to you. I think we've spent the 90 minutes on the subject, which is perfect. And as you fill up the form, a little bit of commercial going on there. So we have the International Coaching Week coming up from the 16th to the 22nd. Reimagine the future is the theme. And for Pune, leading that is Aniruddha Kulkarni. If you'd like to participate and support the event in any form, he's the guy to go to. And the theme for Pune is building a coaching culture. And our event is scheduled on the 20th of May. It's a signature event in Pune. It's a hybrid format, but we urge more and more of you to come in person if you can. It'd be a good excuse to meet up and chat over chai and coffee.
Okay. Are we done, Lata?
Yeah, we're mostly done and people are submitting their forms. And with that, I'd like to say a big thank you to each one of you for the lovely audience that you have been, and participative, interactive, sharing wisdom. Great job done from all your sides to make this a great experience. And I'd also like to thank Mahesh and Jayashree for being so vulnerable, open, and sharing in your wisdom. We learned a lot today from you. And I'd love to thank the team behind the scenes, particularly Pradeep and Shilpa, who did a lot on technology and getting the word out and managing the registrations and all of that. That's been a brilliant piece of work done by them. And on behalf of Pune Charter Chapter, a big thank you to each one of you. Have a nice evening, and apologies for the slight going behind on time. Hope you can forgive us for that. Bye-bye. Signing out.
Thank you, Lata. Thank you, Marisa, for teaching us the most important lesson out of that failure: never give up. So we could see, I mean, even though you had that technical problem, you could fix it. And that is really very important. And thank you for that lesson. I mean, really matched. I mean, when things falls in place. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, and he didn't let on trying different options. He was so calm about it. Okay, let me try something else. Let me try something else.
So
good.
This was one
Really
very
nice.
important lesson that we should all know, that no matter how many failures we are getting during a coaching journey, every failure will teach us something.
Yeah, that's
So
mastery for sure.
That failure, that situation came with a message and a purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thanks, Mahesh and Jayashree, for your
Thanks all.
generosity
Thanks,
and
Pune
courage
chapter.
in sharing your experiences. And thanks, Lata, for being wonderful host.
Welcome,
Lata, you were
Uncle.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Have a good night. Great weekend.
All of you too.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good weekend. Bye.
Bye. Bye, coaches.
Bye, Lata, Mahesh, Jayashree.
Hey, Kalindi.
Bye,
Nice to
Kalindi.
see you there. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Okay.